Welcome, everyone. It's amazing that so many folks showed up so late. I know it's been a very, very long day for everyone with a lot of content. And we brought together quite a crew here to reflect a little bit about Team Topologies. So if you want, you can reflect on your own a little bit. We have a Mentimeter started up, so Team Topologies is now 5 years old. What would be your personal summary to that? What's your take? Yeah, what are your experiences? So if you want to reflect, fill that out. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, I would like to introduce our panel. My name is Michael Plöd. I work as a consultant around Team Topologies, domain-driven design. I'm also an InnoQ fellow and a Team Topologies advocate. And let's go to Evelyn. Quickly.
You can start. We have two mics. Okay, so I'm Evelyn, and I'm working as a consultant, mainly focusing on behavioral change. And from that perspective, Team Topologies is very, very fascinating because, there's a lot happening there. And I think, we all recognize that the main challenge probably is around humans when it comes to a lot of the things we do, including Team Topologies. So that's what my perspective is about today.
Right.
Oh, you already have one.
Wow. I'll pass it on. Eduardo.
Hello, I'm Eduardo Silva. I'm also a consultant. I have a background on technical software engineer, software architect, but over the last maybe 8 years or so, I started moving more towards also the human aspect and the people and teams, etc. And I'm a Team Topologies valid practitioner, which means I'm like a geek on on Team Topologies. So I worked with Manuel and Matthew for like 4 years now. And that's me.
Yeah, my name is Carola. I'm from Hamburg in Germany. I'm the managing director of a company of 170 software developers, and I can say something about how we try Team Topology in our company. And I have some colleagues who do that with clients. And in our book, we just wrote a bit about it because I really love that idea of having something different than just self-organized teams, I like this idea that there's more than that. And this is probably why I'm here.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm a co-author on John Smart's book, Sooner Safe Happier. I'm also, I'm not a consultant. I work full-time for Saxo Bank in Copenhagen, although I'm not from Copenhagen, as you can hear from my accent. And there I'm head of enterprise technology architecture and ways of working. We've been doing something similar to Team Topologies for the last 5 or so years.
Hi, everyone. I'm Svetlana. I work as an Agile coach in a company called Nielsen IQ. And my specialty is around learning. I work with different teams, but I also am very passionate about bringing about learning experiences at work and getting people together to learn from each other. And I found these Team Topologies ideas incredibly useful in getting this up to speed, basically. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I'm Kenny Baas-Schweler. I just come from outside the Ring of Amsterdam. Independent consultant, wrote a book with Evelyn and Gien about collaborative software design, which includes all the social technical dynamics. DDD practitioner, TTVP, just like Eduardo. And last but not least, I try to undermine patriarchy as a hobby. That's me.
All right. So thank you very much. So we had 2 answers from the audience here. Team Topologies, your summary is mind-changing. And another answer is oversimplified but useful. And the third answer that just came in, helpful framework, and we're slowly progressing beyond its peak usefulness as we start to redefine what streamlined teams are, mostly as we discover teams are more ephemeral. And I see the book on many desks. Complex to know the real-world impact. Okay, let's talk about real-world impact. One last question for you from the audience. Please rate to which degree you are adopting Team Topologies principles and practices in your organization. How much do you do with the 4 team types, like streamlined teams, enabling teams, platform teams, complex subsystem teams, the 3 team interaction modes, fast flow principles in general, fracture planes, and platform as a product? So what's your take on that? We'd be very curious about that.
Going to win.
Yeah, it's moving. It's moving. Yeah, it's interesting. In the current development, I think very interesting is that the rating of fracture planes, which actually help to define team boundaries, whereas we have quite a bit of a focus on the 4 team types. And also, I'm surprised by platform as a product that this has this degree of adoption. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing for me. Yeah, especially the fracture planes. Is there anyone from the panel who wants to comment on that, or any other remarks? Simon.
I guess I'm surprised and not surprised by the fracture planes piece. I think a lot of people, being a sort of architect by partial trade at least, focus on the, and again, maybe, I hate myself for saying this, over-focus on the human side of Team Topologies and don't focus on the fact that Team Topologies is both about architecture and about teams at the same time. I've definitely seen that.
All right.
Kenny needs the other one.
No. Yeah. I actually see it opposite. I see a lot of focus on structure on the first 2, or on the first actually. If you especially see it in that shall not be named safe, is really focused on the team types, and I don't see the human interaction really teaching teams to do so. And the fracture planes, I don't know, I think more dominant people are focusing on domains, subdomains, which coming from domain-driven design, and I see a relationship between the 2.
There is.
So I think from a domain-driven design perspective, we look more at subdomains than fracture planes. So that's a little bit what I see.
I will become a panelist for a second. I think the most interesting thing here is actually, if you take a look at fracture planes, they start with bounded contexts and subdomains, but they break it down even further, and I think that's a very healthy perspective. Yeah, I'm a DDD guy by heart and have a long history in the community, but I would say it's a very good thing to go beyond what domain-driven design propagates and say, let's start with subdomains or bounded contexts, and then look further, like, for instance, these performance criteria that Matthew and Manuel mentioned, and I even, in my own work, say, let's take a look at quality criteria of certain modules in software or certain responsibilities, and I think fracture planes really break that down nicely to expand the perspective. All right.
I was having a thought when I saw the results. My thought was, well, you start with what you have. Yeah. It's like you already have teams, you might have some interaction and platforms as well defined, but fracture planes is kind of new, at least to my experience. When if I say that to someone, the question is, what is that? So I feel like maybe we start with these things that we have, and then we continue to introduce new things for people who don't know about it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me add one more observation to that poll, to the panel. Fast flow principles, are the second least voted things in terms of adoption. And let me provoke. Isn't Team Topologies actually about fast flow principles? So what's your take on that? Evelyn.
Just processing a lot, because one of the questions that also comes up, like, you didn't ask something about how successful the adoption is. I mean, to which degree are you adopting the principles and practices? It doesn't say it may be adopting and practicing, but not successful at all. Mm-hmm. Could be an interesting thing here. But the fast flow principles, yes and no. Because I get what you're saying. Shouldn't it be about fast flow principles? Yes, to a certain extent. But this is also the most vague concept, I think, in the list of these things. So I think there could be a lot of interpretations there on what it means and what it brings to a team. So yeah, I would be hesitant to say something about fast flow principles as well if I would have to answer this question, but I'm not sure how you guys see that.
Well, you always say act fast flow, right? Do fast
do it.
flow.
Show me.
Show it.
Yeah, that's hard.
Anyone?
We are like them. I think we are like them. I mean, we don't. I can't even say that we are doing them, but probably we do. We just don't know.
Okay.
So we need some courses, I think.
Give the mic to Eduardo. He's like
I can give some courses, so you can.
In-panel sales pitch.
One needs to take the opportunities. I think the idea of the fast flow is so basic that maybe we don't even think about it, right? So the key idea is, okay, we are actually trying to use this language so that our teams can basically go from idea to value as fast as possible, right? So that's the basic idea of, and there are many things around it. So we may need to do different things. So, but yeah, I think there is a lot of relationship that I see sometimes mixed, which is what Kenny was mentioning, the interactions. Although it's scoring high, people don't look a lot on those in order to achieve the fast flow. So I think this is the part that I think is probably the most overlooked thing in team topologies.
I think I have a practical example just from like 3 days ago. So we had a conflict between two different teams. So over time, the SRE team has had to make some changes, and the interaction between and collaboration between them and another team was changed. And at one point, the product team realized, not the product team, sorry, the SRE team realized we're not getting feedback from the product teams on the work that we are doing. And now we want the product teams to please look at our board and see if there is something pending so they can answer there's something pending and we can move on. And then there was some arguing, stuff like that. And then you realize, oh my God, it's about these interaction modes. It's exactly, there was some changes, collaboration mode changes between the teams. And now we need to think about, okay, what would be the new interaction mode that we need to use now so work actually flows. So I think that was really an aha moment for me, especially how do we recognize these things in work, in practice.
All right. Thank you. Let's move over to the next question, to the panel. Where do you think, in your experience throughout the last 5.5 years since Team Topologies is out and those principles and ideas and structures gained a certain momentum in the industry? I mean, nothing is perfect. Yeah, and I really don't want to say that Team Topologies is perfect on all the edges and ideas and so on, but where would you say were your mostly challenging problems and difficulties that arose in your experience from the application of Team Topologies, ideas, principles, and so on? And let's start with Carola.
Michael, yeah. So in our company, Streamlined teams was easy, you know, because everybody was doing that somehow. Yeah? And platform teams was a great idea because it liberated those people that sort of felt that they were doing something for the others, but nobody told them that it was good, and they always felt like, hoo-hoo, I'm not creating any value. So this was easy. But the other two, I'm still, I have people who help other people put up their a new front end when they are starting a new project and they have to do React, for instance, and they never did it before. And then, but I see that these people, they fall in love with a new project. So it's so hard to get an enabling team to go away, you know, because they just love it so much what they do there. And we can keep helping, can't we, Carola? Yeah, but you know, no, it's time to go. So this is sort of this is what I see with enabling teams. It's hard to find the end, really, in our company at least. And the complex subsystem teams, we never tried out that concept. We never did that.
Maybe
yet.
you didn't have a use for it.
Yeah, maybe we didn't. Maybe. Yeah, because. Well, our teams are like 3 to maybe 15 people, and they all love to solve complex problems, actually.
All right.
So giving that to someone else is sort of a frustrating story. Okay. But, you know, so this is our experience.
All right.
Just
Simon, what's your take?
It's actually pretty similar. I think the challenging, I mean, we do have a few complicated subsystem teams. You know, I work in a pretty complex domain in capital markets, investment management, so I can definitely point at the complicated subsystem teams. But enabling teams, I think, for us, it's not just the sort of individuals and then wanting to stay on one domain and focused on one stream for some time. It's also at the level above, it's sort of making the business case to fund long-lived enabling teams. It's like, well, no, they should be working on features. It's that sort of trust that prioritizing making the work better, as well as just doing the work, it has a business case, deserves funding. That I think has been a challenge.
All right. So since Svetlana already has a mic,
I think that's exactly the same experience that we've had. It's really hard to put focus on a team like that, which doesn't have a proven value proposition that you can say, hey, this is why we're valuable, this is how we measure this, how can we now form a new team, and they're just doing, what are they doing? This has been for us very, very difficult, and I feel like in this kind of environment, it's useful to focus on what are the principles that we can use, it, even if we're not able to form those teams. What can we still do in order to get to these behaviors that we like?
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Eduardo.
I have a course on enabling teams, a video course.
Now it's
yeah. No, it's fun. I just found it. No, I think those two, the enabling teams and complicated subsystems, I see a lot of confusion around them. I agree with the rest. The other two are like, right, so either you are working to produce value for customers or you are helping other teams to do it. The complicated subsystems, I consult with companies and sometimes they say, oh, we have 80% of our teams are complicated subsystems. We have very complex
everything is complex here.
And the nuance, I think it's, so by definition is, do you need certain skills to actually do that? Or so it's very unique, I think, in banks, like people that really know about certain, I don't know, statistical models, etc. So that's, to me, it's the heuristic, the key heuristic for complicated subsystems. And we need to repeat this again and again. And for the enabling teams, 100%. It's because typically they don't produce value immediately. So the funding of enabling teams is a very tricky one. And the last is the confusion of enabling teams with the facilitating interaction mode.
Oh, that's interesting.
This is very often people confuse them. Because you can have a team that lives for an indefinite amount of time. For example, I often talk about architects as an enabling team. So, right, so they could exist for a long time. But we should strive to have temporary or very focused facilitating interactions. And this is a very, something that gets confused very, very often.
All right. Before we move over to Evelyn and Kenny, I would like to pitch in an idea. What I very often see as a very big challenge, especially in larger companies, is that Team Topologies sometimes advocates for a certain change of behavior in the teams, like this topic, team autonomy, but also the enabling part, where people who were, let's say, 5 years ago, giving orders to others. So I'm the chief architect, and you need to do and implement what I say. Then I need to become an enabler. That this is very often embodied in an organization in terms of salary systems, in terms of budgeting processes. And I think especially on that budgeting side, how do you set up a budget for an enabling team, the funding, what you said? How do you fund a Streamlined team? How do you fund a platform team? I mean, this is very often also a very heavy cultural shift. And I, for instance, once had a situation where at a customer, we wanted to establish architects as enablers, but the salary system said, hey, if you want to earn more money in the salary system, you need to tell others what to do. And now we take this telling others what to do away with that and say, no, you enable others to do what you do. So this is very often a very interesting roadblocker. So maybe you want to build up on those ideas, and let's start with Kenny and then Evelyn.
Because they still earn the same thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So first they tell others what to do, and then now they're enablers for the teams, and now we talked about this last week, right? Now they're autonomous, but still that person's still earning more. So what I usually see is, well, I hinted at it, smash the patriarchy. For me, the focus for Team Topologies is team first. What I usually see happening is clients come to me and says, we need to go to Team Topology. And then I ask, okay, what do the teams actually think? And then it turns quiet. And for me, Team Topology is really about team first. So we need, I recently, or yesterday, I posted something about that, right? Saying, putting teams in streamlined teams and not giving them the opportunity to self-organize or select their opportunities or design is like buying a self-driving car, turn up all the functionality, drive it yourself, and then whine about it that it's not performing. That's what I see usually happening. I had clients coming in, we need to reorganize with Team Topology. And I said, no, that's not what it's for. For me, the end goal, and we need to go there step by step, and I think, I hope I'll pass it on to Evelyn, talking about behavior in that, because that's an important factor. It needs to be step by step, but in the end goal, you want teams to learn the Team Topology structure, the dynamics, team interaction modeling, so when they're faced with a challenge, they can use Team Topology as a dialogue between teams, that intentional conversation between the teams, to let them self-organize. And a great book to go with that is Heidi Heimfeld's Dynamic Reteaming, right? She says roughly the same. The end goal for me is teams telling managers, hey, we just reorganized. Make it happen. That's where I want it to be. A little bit of undermining the patriarchy there as well. But I think that's a good thing, and Andrew's book about facilitating architecture also goes into that. My first step, by the way, is also either doing event storming with the team to find fast flow. You can do that on the team flow as well. It doesn't have to be on a case. Paul Reiner wrote about that. Secondly, I usually do a form of Wortley mapping, user needs mapping, start with the user in need in mind. Ask the team, what's the user, what's the need? Start there. That's, and that hopefully drives better behavior. But
let me add flow engineering to that stuff as well. Simon mentioned it in his talk. Big fan of that. And let's move over to Evelyn.
Yeah. No, because the short answer is it could be humans, but I think the main challenge that I'm seeing is that a lot of the technical choices that are being made have social consequences, and that we're not good at dealing with those. So I've heard all of you mentioning examples of, hey, we decided to do Team Topologies, and then something shifts in power structure, or something shifts in how we should interact with each other, or we're just expecting people to behave in a different way magically. Surprise, that never happens. And I think that's what we're lacking. I think there's a skill that we could be way better at, and if we really want to change something in behavior, then the most important thing to understand is that people only show behavior because there's something in it for them, right? There's a positive consequences related to the new behavior, and if it's not, then you can decide whatever you want on that Team Topology is the right way to go, but I don't think it will fly off, let's say. So I think that's a very important thing to remember. Like, if you want something to change, think about what's in it for them. And that's the other way around as well, right? If you think, wow, this person is so annoying and so, why? Then you should realize that there is something in that behavior for that person. So there's positive consequences related to it, and it's your job to find out what that is if you want to change something.
Carola.
It's so wonderful what you are all talking about, because Michael just triggered me with something he said. Because he said, where do we find a budget for the enabling team? And you said, well, we just have to do something. And if I may, in our company, we created something. We decided that we want to have in German we call it Unterstützungskultur. And in English, it would be an enabling culture. And there was this question about the budget. And we created a rule, and we said that anybody could help anybody else, even if he would be in a different project, for at least 2 times half an hour on his own project budget to foster this enabling culture. If it's more than 2 times half an hour, then you have to discuss with the other project leader where to get the money and all this blah blah stuff. And this changed everything in our company. And I just felt that this would be maybe something to tell you, because it was like a click for me. Oh yes, we do enabling. It's just not a team. It's everybody who is doing that, because we say you can. You don't have to search for the money. You don't have to discuss it with your boss. If somebody is calling you because he knows that you know a lot about Kubernetes or whatever, you can just help. For half an hour you can do it on your own budget. And this really changed a lot, everything. And I know it's not Team Topology, but
it is Team Topologies, actually. Yeah, I think this is 100% Team Topologies. It's on my video course, by the way. It's on the first chapter that we talk about. No, really, because when you think about enabling, you don't need teams. What you actually want is the people that know about something to be able to help others. So what you are doing is exactly what we. I'm joking with you, of course, but this is exactly what we talked about, which is allowing enabling behaviors to happen. Yeah. And you don't need a team. Sometimes it's just a person that can help another person to get unblocked, so that they can continue do their work. And the second part you mentioned, which is sometimes you may need to have a group of 2 people to train the whole company for a long time. So then you probably need to start saying, okay, well, maybe let's think about how we finance this, etc. Yeah. But this is oftentimes you don't need to. It's better to focus on these things that you shared than we need an official thing. Otherwise, we don't do anything.
But it had to be an official thing, you know.
Yeah.
I think they were doing it already, but then people started to ask me, Carola, because I'm the boss, unfortunately, and they started to ask me, Carola, where do we put that time? Okay. I mean, on which budget? And I said, what? And then I said, no, we're going to change the game, you know? Yeah. It's not about asking me where to put half an hour or what, don't do that, you know? And then we created this rule, and it gave the whole organization such a freedom, you know, to do that.
That's
so,
good.
I don't know, talk to your boss.
So 2 more opinions, and then we move on to the next question. So,
and I think this is awesome, and I think we're talking about incentives, and I think this is so much at the heart of this. Like, effectively, what you're implying is there used to be a sort of negative incentive. Used to be a negative incentive that somebody needed a time code to book to help people. They were disincentivized to help. So you've removed that negative incentive, you know, or you give people a positive incentive. It's like great, you get some credit, but it is all about incentive engineering and making sure that these things are in place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the new book.
Actually, yes.
Yes. No, absolutely. It's the same experience that we've made. I think there is another incentive as well here at play. You know how in the past we were glorifying the hero that saved the project, and this was the person that would get the promotion. This was the person who was recognized as the big person, and now I guess a big part of changing that to the better is don't just recognize the contribution to the project, recognize the enablement as well when you're considering people for promotion. I think that's very powerful.
A little bit of an elephant in the room that we were talking about here was actually covered in the amazing talk by Jakob and Kitte today. Yeah, like when you say the hero, yeah, how leadership should act, yeah, and so on. So who wasn't in that talk and finds that interesting, make sure to watch that video because that talks a lot about these things as well. Yeah.
Can I add
one more
small comment? So incentives, yes, and Team Topology talks about blockers to flow. Blockers to flow of friction. If you map out the blockers and the friction, there's a social scientist who checked out, right? The lower the friction, think about it, right? When you get a subscription, the friction is very low. It's easy to get the subscription. Getting off the subscription is hard. So what you did was change the subscription. You made it very easy to start doing things. That's called friction. And that's Team Topology calls it blockers to flow. If we model that out, start with that. Then you're already great on your way, I think. So I agree with Eduardo.
Great point. So Eduardo and me were joking in the longer break that I'm notorious for changing plans spontaneously in talks and so on. I will do a quick change in the flow of the questions. Which stakeholders in an organization should be involved with team topologies? Yeah, we talked a lot about like changes, friction, blockers, and obviously you as the boss, yeah, were involved there. So which stakeholders, so if you want to adopt ideas and principles of team topologies, if you want to move that way, who should you involve? And I would like to start with Kenny, and I think I have a very strong assumption what your answer is going to be.
So I'm with Eduardo. We have a book, Evelyn and me, so I'm a product placement. In the book, we talk about ranking theory. So don't think only about the explicit ranking, and I think maybe, Evelyn, you should correct me if I'm wrong, because you're much better at explaining ranking theory than me.
I will correct you.
Yeah, you will correct me. So ranking, there's explicit ranking, right? Especially you need people at the top, right? Because they hold the explicit power. But there's always this, Alberto calls it the dungeon master, right? The one that's there 20 years, still is an engineer, knows a lot, and it's not a negative thing, right? I've met a lot of people who's been in the company 20 years, and they're afraid to let go sometimes, right? It's their thing. So again, why are they doing this? That's what Evelyn said, because they care. And you need to involve and listen to them as well. I've been in so many conversations where managers were like, okay, I'm going to listen to the engineers, and then they say, okay, but we're still going to do it. Empowering and amplifying those engineering conversation really helps and let them be listened to. So if you look at the implicit power structure, look who needs to be involved that has a lot of rank. So that usually goes into who's there the longest, who knows about it, who has pseudo rights on all the systems. Definitely involve that person, because they can overnight just change things. But yeah, you have probably much more examples of that.
Yeah, but I think the ranking thing is a very very important one. And like you said, the moment that in general people feel that something might be taken away from them, that's the moment that we all get very, like, we will be making surprising moves. And I think, yeah, in terms of behavior, whenever you feel like, hey, something might be taken away from me that was mine, and now someone is going to take it away, I will do everything that I can to make sure that I'll keep it. So that's also what happens there. And I think, especially in that sense, leadership and people high in rank, even if it's informal leadership, but they are the ones who can create an environment, and I cannot pronounce the beautiful German word that you use for the culture that you described, but enabling. Yeah, but teach me the German word after. But I think this is where leadership should play a huge role. If you talk about stakeholders, they should create the environment in which also all of these incentives, reinforcement can happen. And if that's not there, then yeah, it won't work.
All right. Who wants to go next?
Maybe to go in a bit different direction. Totally, I think this is an incredibly important point. I just don't want to repeat it. But maybe another one is to think about who would be the early adopters, who would be the supporters right away, and focus on them no matter where they are, I'd say. It's a little vague, but I feel like it's important when you want to bring in a strong idea like that could change a lot about the organization.
Mm-hmm. So, Eduardo?
I will not talk about my, no. No, I think there are, so this question is a tricky question. I asked Michael back, what do you mean by this? Because if we are starting, say, talking about this, I'm all in with what Evelyn and Kenny were mentioning, right? So we need to have those people that help creating the conditions beyond the conversations. But in the end, I think if we are over that phase, this should just be like the language we use to talk with each other. And hopefully everyone would be involved with Team Topologies, and I think we are just use different words because we try to own and evolve a certain system. We talk with other people to figure out things. I think it's just, can we have a better language? For example, we say, we should all collaborate with each other, and Team Topologies is very explicit on the language, right? So collaboration is about figuring out something together and should be temporary, and this is purposely driven. And I think these nuances is what I after the initial adoption is the things that are very beneficial for everyone in the company to be aware of. And yeah, so yeah.
I think of course, someone up there in the ladder has to be convinced and say, well, we're going to do Team Topology now. I think to convince teams that are streamlined teams to follow these ideas is quite easy, because all of a sudden they are seen as the ones who are creating values and all the others have to help them. So this is nice, you know. But people I know who tend to say, well, I am in a platform team. They like that they have a name now, but then somebody tells them that they have to offer their services the most simple way possible to help the others. And this is a point where I see that platform teams tend to look at me like, what? Because we create something very important and it is complicated as well, and easy ways, it's not, we can't do that. And for them, this is really hard, as far as I have seen, you know. And these are the ones with the, you know, who can change everything. So to convince them to be sort of as a service to others, this is sometimes difficult, I think. I mean, if I look at my company, you're nodding, you know.
So you basically mean the product thinking part of the platform, and the thinking, a concept that I find very, very interesting in the book is this idea of the thinnest viable platform, like applying MVP ideas to building a platform.
And things that are easy to use, you know, woo-hoo-hoo, you know.
Yeah, self-service capabilities. And
I'm just provoking
like
again, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Simon.
I'm just going to violently agree with everybody. So, yeah, to a degree, start where you are. You know, map what you have now. A lot of what you have is streamlined teams. It is platform teams. It might be the fifth secret unknown team type. But you have a set of team topologies today, just like you have a value stream today. And again, violently agree that sometimes the old sysops, people who are some of the oldest people, they have got into a habit of taking ServiceNow tickets to do their job rather than providing X as a service. And they know that they are some of the people who know the company very best. There is a great clean language book that I love just from the title. It's called From Contempt to Curiosity. And genuinely, I've had to check myself to do that. It's like, why the hell are you doing that like that? Oh, okay, fine. You know this organization backwards. I just want to learn more about what you do.
Yeah, all right. So let's move over to the last question. So the last big one that I want to discuss with you. So basically, by the book, Team Topologies promotes 4 types of teams and 3 interaction modes. And if you take a look at the Team Topologies website, something appeared like the undefined team type undefined and team interaction mode undefined, something like handover. And if you take a look at this terminology, and this is something that a lot of people who are new to the concept very, very early on jump on the bandwagon. Okay, we need to think in 4 team types, 3 interaction modes, hopefully the interaction modes as well, because I think they're very valuable. How good are we as an industry in distinguishing between these team types and working with that terminology, working with those ideas? Where do we see room for improvement here? So if we would move the idea forward, what would be your take in that area? Who wants to go first?
I had a reaction to it, which was like, when you said undefined, I was like, okay, that's our flag for to do.
Yeah. I'm very happy that this was added, actually. Yeah, because it's like, oh, there's something where we have to do something, where we need to find out. Yeah, maybe, and also I like the idea of these team types acting as magnets. Yeah, a team is mostly drawn to one of those types. Yeah, so maybe the magnet is not strong enough in one direction. Yeah, so Eduardo, maybe you.
Yeah, I also I like the undefined types and interactions, because I think in many organizations that's where we start, like what Simon was saying, right? And that's perfectly fine, because a big anti-pattern or issue I've seen with the initial ideas of everyone was happy and they would just rename the existing whatever teams they had to one of these 4. And
DevOps team.
And we are fine. This was the fastest and cheapest transformation we had in this company, right? But this is ignoring the reality, and I think it's good to put those and also use the other ones, like where are handovers and all of those things that tend to block flow of change. But if I go to your original question, I think we already touched them. So I think the Streamlined teams, people get it rather quickly. The platforms with the challenges, they start seeing them. The other 2 they are much more tricky, and they also mentioned the confusion of the interaction modes, and particularly the facilitating collaboration. People think it's something you can do forever, and the X as a service. It's interesting because people from domain-driven design community. I think you actually have a talk on that, Michael. Like, what's in right? So there are many nuances on what's in X as a service. So
it was an article in the Domain-Driven Design and Team Topologies mini book, where I combined the interaction modes with context mapping patterns. So to get a deep dive into X as a service relationships.
And here I think like what's the power play in these interactions? That there is a lot of things there. So I think people, when I think it got very popular, the topic, and people took it too very superficial. I think like maybe other ideas. Yeah, but that's roughly my take on this. Yeah.
All right. So Kenny has the mic, as far as I see.
I want to actually give it to Evelyn, because what I hear you say, and I know a few things, but Evelyn knows a lot more about this. Facilitation, streamlined team, collaboration, it's mentioned a couple of times. They're container words, right? So what's the first thing we should actually do in that situation for your company is define them.
Yeah, I agree. So that was actually what was triggering me in your question, because you were asking how good are we as an industry in the concepts and the definitions, and I don't really care, actually, to be honest, how good we are as an industry. I think it's important that as an organization, you're good at it, or at least you're on the same page about what it means to you in your context. So sure, there should be general definitions and understandings and iterations on that, but I think in the end it's really about how an organization is going to use it in a useful way. And I've seen organizations that are just staring blind on the definitions and as it should be, and it's not helping at all. So as an industry, I don't know. I don't really care.
Great point.
But it's more
like that.
as an organization.
I like that. I like that.
And, I think that as an industry, we are quite amazing, because we are all the time reinventing ourselves, I mean, if you look back, it started with, we invented automated testing, and then we invented Agile, and then we invented domain-driven design, and then we invented DevOps, and now it's Team Topology. I mean, what else do you want? An industry that invented itself every 5 years, there's a new thing, and it is changing what we are doing, It's really great. So I think we are quite good.
That's cool.
And it will take some time, but it's good.
Yes. And I want to add what was mentioned earlier about, we're now doing team topology without changing power structures. And Trond gives great talks about socio-technical, open socio-technical theory, right? Are we actually moving in the right direction? Team topology is, in essence, trying to do that. Domain-driven design, in my opinion, tried to do that, but every time I give training as well, people focus on structure. Is this a policy? And this is, I don't care. Is it helping you? Are you making things explicit? I think that should be the main point for me. We've been talking a lot. Normally I don't, I like it, but sorry.
What are you saying?
As a domain-driven designer, I try to model. And we're so good at focusing on the technique. And there's this great podcast, it's in Dutch, about our public transport system, where they started out very well with, we want to do something for the user. And then it got to production. Oh boy. And I feel every time, and that's a human thing, humans, right? Focus on what Simon says, user needs. If you do that, and every day you remind yourself, put it above your bed, I think then it will be a greater world, because what Evelyn says, I don't care, user needs, start from there, and remind yourself, because else you're going to get into that pseudo-rights at some point. And that's where the public railway in the Netherlands went wrong at the start.
So, Simon.
So, for those who were there for my talk, I'm going to call back to that a little bit. I think in a frozen organization, in an organization that wants a rule book to follow, I don't think Team Topologies is going to help if you are just saying, great, I just want a pattern, let's impose this pattern on the organization. Whereas if you're looking at Team Topologies as a set of enabling constraints, there will be fuzziness, there will be messiness. There is definitely messiness in X as a service, because honestly, unless you have the most simple interface possible that is never going to change, you're going to need some collaboration. Hey, I need a new attribute here. You're going to, there is messiness in here, but if you see it as a set of messy enabling constraints that may help, that you collaborate, that you inspect and adapt, and that you evolve, then it's helpful. If you see it as a rule book to follow, as with many of these things, as with Agile, as with so much, then it's not going to help.
All right. So to wrap this up, or is there someone else who wants to mention? To wrap this up, one last question that I didn't announce to you. If you would be able, or you would like to add one thing to Team Topologies, what would it be? Or if there's one thing that you would like to remove from it, what would it be? Simon.
Sorry, I'm hogging the mic. So I find it really interesting, the sort of platform team versus platform grouping.
Yeah.
In Sooner, Safer, Happier, we just say, like I said earlier, the value streams as was, probably value centers, and they're just shared service value centers. So I think, I mean, our platform teams actually Streamlined teams, and the value stream is internally delivering, and yes, they're grouped into a platform. For me, that I think is a better perspective, that actually there is a value stream being delivered by the platform as much as there is a value stream being delivered via the customer-facing value stream. So maybe I would go harder on actually platform teams are also streamlined and they're grouped into a platform.
Mm-hmm. All right, Eduardo wants to add something?
I was just, because that was the first thing that came into mind, so Manuel and Matthew and a few of us actually proposed this to, I think this should come in the next iteration of the book, and I think that's the topic that I would add into Team Topologies, which is, you are a team, you are not an island, you live in an ecosystem, and you need to accept that you, I don't know, particularly in more complex organizations, a single team may not be able to own and deliver a value stream, so you need to work with others, and then we get the dynamics of multiple teams working. I think actually you did a good talk last week in Fast Flow, talking about the multi-team, right? There are dynamics there, and we need to be aware of that. And I think Manuel and Matthew focused on the team, which is really the essential, and that's a topic that it's very important to look into. Yeah.
So we have a raised hand from Simon.
Oh dear. Right. So when I spoke earlier today, I talked about some basic principles, the collection of which I call doctrine, and the most easy ones of those are things like focus on the user needs, understand the supply chain, etc. There's a list of 40 of them, and they start at phase 1, those easy ones we mentioned, then phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And as you put these principles into an organization, what you find is over time the organizational structure changes. There's a particular organizational structure which I call explorers, villagers, town planners. I used to call it pioneers, settlers, cell-based structure. That naturally forms in an organization once you start putting all those principles in place. So what you don't do, well, my experience is you don't change the structure, you change the principles which causes the structure to emerge in the organization. So the question I have in Team Topologies, can you explain to me what the principles I should have in place which create the structure?
Oh, Eduardo.
So I think probably the most basic principles that Team Topologies goes about is this idea of cognitive load, Simon. So like teams that can own things that they would be able to work on, etc. I think that's probably the most fundamental one. So and this I think gets then into this, say, that the topic that I was trying to get into, which is if you start doing that, then organically, right, you start seeing actually we need multiple teams to own these different parts, like what Susanne Kaiser goes into her book, right? Like, and I think this is great because that's exactly the point of a team cannot own something that they cannot understand completely or cannot own and evolve at a reasonable pace. So I think that's the most fundamental principle, I would say, in Team Topologies, the idea of the cognitive load. And I believe that gets into this idea that then you start seeing emergence happening by having some of these in place. Not sure if someone else wants to add.
Yeah, Svetlana?
I think very linked to that is this enablement, because it's linked to reducing the cognitive load. You want to enable people so that there is some reduction of this cognitive load.
All right. Kenny?
I wanted to comment on what I wanted to add to Team Topology. Is that
Sure. Go ahead.
So who's read the foreword?
By Ruth?
Exactly. I want more Ruth in the book.
Yes.
If you don't follow her, go online, check the foreword. Ruth Malan, she's a pioneer in the industry. Please follow her. She also gives online courses. She will be in Europe, actually,
Yeah,
I think, in the coming months. It's a great opportunity because she doesn't travel a lot. If you could do it now.
Yes.
I want more of Ruth in the book.
I booked my ticket. All right. So, anyone else? Okay. So, we would like to wrap this panel up now. I think we'll be around for questions, discussions. I don't know, the two folks back there, they will have maybe some announcements, but just a quick announcement from my side. Kenny, Svetlana, Evelyn, Eduardo, you had, and Carola will all have talks tomorrow as well in the conference. Simon is already done. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this wonderful panel. Thank you, Michael, for moderating it. And thank you to every one of you guys for being here.
And you're absolutely right, Michael. There will be a chance to mingle a little bit more until 9 o'clock. But at 9 o'clock, even the wardrobe closes. So maybe you have to move your mingling to someplace else. But you have almost an hour to discuss everything you want to discuss with everyone you want to discuss it with.
Will there still be drinks? That's the most important question.
Yes.
So that's good.
Until 9, there will be drinks.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I will keep it with Carola's words. I loved that sentence that you said, that we're a great industry we are, that we keep on evolving all the time. I think this is super important, and the most beautiful thing about it is that we all are part of it, and we all are evolving all the time. And I think that is something that we should always keep in mind, because this is how we get further, how we build better systems for our clients, for users, and never stop evolving, and looking forward for another great day tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And big thanks to all the speakers and to all of you who made this conference and make this conference such a great experience.
Yes. And thank you to our crew, very important as well. And have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
See you.